So once again, good morning, everyone. I'm Quentin de Hulst, Director for Green and Healthy Buildings at the European Copper Institute, and I'm glad to welcome you to our fourth EPBD debate. The EPBD, Energy Performance of Buildings Directive, sets the framework to achieve a zero-emission building stock. We have had already 3 debates on the road to zero-emission buildings, and we explored the challenge from different angles. The first debate was with MEP Morten Elvik Pettersen about the importance of energy efficiency first. The second debate was with MEP Sean Kelly, and we discussed the skills and the importance of electrical installations. Our third debate was with Karen Cuff, the E3 rapporteur, and we discussed how zero-emission buildings integrate into a zero-emission energy system. So you can find the recordings and presentation of these debates on our website if you could not join us at that occasion. But today is our fourth debate, the last of this series, and we will discuss the very important perspective of consumers. For this, I'm pleased to welcome Marcos Rosempere, a Spanish member of the European Parliament for the SND and shadow rapporteur on the EPBD in the ENVI committee. Marcos is also an architect and the co-rapporteur on the new European Bauhaus communication. We can certainly ensure consistency between the different files. So welcome, Marcos. Thank you for joining us. The renovation wave will not be successful if not embraced by consumers. Many households are keen to live into a more sustainable building, and I just heard that Marcos has the pleasure to live in an apartment that is R-rated, so it's very low energy consumption. So I think everyone would like to have this. It will improve their quality of life and reduce their energy bill. But they face challenges related to the information, to technical choices, to investment capacity, and many more. So consumers must be accompanied to be able to do the right choices. So to discuss it today, we have, together with MEP Marcos Rosempere, we have first Javier Garcia from the Spanish Organization of Consumers and Users. It's the Spanish member of BUG, the well-known consumer association at the EU level. He will introduce the discussion with a short presentation of a study that BUG did comparing green heating options for consumers. Then we have Olivier Tissot, representing the European Forum for Electrical Domestic Safety. This forum gathers the electrical installation value chain, fire services, consumers, and insurance with the aim to improve electrical safety in dwellings. And safety is a prerequisite to the energy transition. Then we have Adrian Joyce, campaign director of Renovate Europe, a political campaign active since more than 10 years in Brussels with the aim to reduce by 80% the energy demand of the building stock through ambitious renovation policies, such as the EPBD, of course. So Adrian is also an architect, really experienced in this topic. Welcome, Adrian. And last but not least, Emmanuel Kos from the International Union of Property Owners, the leading organization for individual owners and private landlords in Europe. And they are really important into our discussion because renovation will be a big task for property owners. We need to make the right choices. Welcome, Emmanuel. So before to start our debate with our panelists and the audience, so I remind that you can raise questions via the Q&A button. I will now give the floor to Javier to introduce the consumer perspective and the study that BUG did with a very explicit title, Goodbye Gas, Why Your Next Boiler Should Be a Heat Pump. So Javier, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Quentin, for inviting us to present the study that we done some months ago in relation with the consumer cost of the decarbonized heat. Thank you very much to everybody that is seeing this debate via the internet. The first one is in relation with our study is what is the context, because we did this study, and it's clear that heating is one of the sectors that more contribute to the CO2 emissions, and its decarbonization needs to be addressed. Just to put some figures, in the case of Spain, 42% of the energy used in Spain's household is for heating, and around 18% is for produce hot water. But in Europe, in Europe, even these figures are higher, because we are talking about around 65%. This project, or this study, was carried out with 4 European consumers organization from Italy, Poland, Czech Republic, and Spain, and in the framework working with the BEUC and with the collaboration of the Energy Climate Foundation. What are the key points of this study? Logically, is not is limited, because the budget, as in all the things, is limited. We analyze the idea is to analyze the cost of the decarbonisation for consumers, but taking into account that some of the possible solution for decarbonisation heating in our houses. We analyze the costs and the benefits that could have the renovation of our houses, and what is this benefit, both for consumers but even for the system. We try to determine the impact of the use of intelligent system for control the heating, to see the potential benefits for consumer, reducing their consumption, but even for the system to use less energy. And even we compare the cost of decarbonisation in the case of use of district heating system for consumers. We studied three possible scenarios. The use of in the case of the system, we analyze the cost of the heat pump, electrical heat pump. The second one is to use the hydrogen boiler instead of the gas boiler that in many houses are present now. And the third option is to use a hybrid system with a heat pump, but some type of help with a hydrogen boiler or hot water system. We do in two type of houses, in a multi-family home and a single family home. And the period where we study the course is from 25 to 2040, around 15 years, that we consider that is the time that between change of the heating system. And we, as I have commented, to see, we want to see what are the influence of the measures to improve the energy efficiency. In these two slides, we can see is the first conclusion. The first conclusion for the 4 countries is that the electric heat pump is the system, the more economical system for all the cases. And as we can see, the hydrogen boiler is higher, the cost is higher. Although the installation is the cost of installation is lower, but finally the final cost for the use is higher in all the countries. If we can see here in the case of Italy and Poland is similar. Even in the north, logically in the cold countries, the expenses are higher than in the south countries, but the conclusions are the same. We want to see how what are the influence of the renovation in the if this renovation can change the conclusion. Here we are going to present only the conclusions for Spain, but really are very similar for 2 other countries. And we can see here in this part that if we use a partial renovation, not a high renovation, that will be the change of the windows, electric heat pump continues as being the best option from the economical point of view for consumers. Here, logically, the costs are higher than in the previous slide, because here we include the cost of the renovation. If we go to a deep renovation, when we will not only change the windows, that we can do isolation of the walls and a complete renovation. Really, the conclusion are more or less the same. Here we can see that the cost in the case of a hybrid system and hydrogen boiler could be more or less similar, but heat pump continues being the best option. Here we can see and to say what are the annual running costs for the different heating system in two countries, due to different countries. South country, that is Spain, and Poland, that is a north country with more consumption. But we can see in all the cases for single house or for flats, that heat pump is the best option. Only in the case of single houses in Poland, we can see that the hybrid system could be a good option. If we see what are we introduce the variable of the district heating and the use of different systems with the district heating, we see more or less a similar conclusion. In the case of Spain, the heat pump continues being the best option for consumers, and in another cases we can see that in function of the development of district heating system, that could be that the hybrid system could be in some cases even a good solution in comparison or more or less similar to the hydrogen system. And in Poland we can see that are similar. To sum up, we believe, according with the conclusions that we in our study, that heat pump will be the most economical system for consumers if we go to the decarbonization of the heating. One of the solutions that are in the table under discussion is the use of hydrogen distributed through the gas networks. Looks, and according to our conclusion, that will be more expensive for consumer. It's clear that improve the household efficiency have significant benefits for consumer, and these benefits are even higher in the cold countries. And the importance of to use a system that allow to consumer flexibility for the heating system could reduce the cost for consumers around 25%, but even these people are giving some flexibility to the system, and in some way these people must be recompensated for this flexibility. And what are our requests in this case to the policymakers? We believe that it's necessary to support the switch for the climatization system to the heat pumps, because according with the conclusion of the study, is the best option for the consumers, for the economical point of view. But it's necessary too that the consumers can have a financial support to address this switch, not only for change the heat pumps or the heating system, but even for improve the energy efficiency of their homes. But it's necessary that all consumers have really access to a correct information and good advice, and even to have access to qualified professionals that could deal on all these changes. It's important too, as I commented before, that for those consumers that use intelligent system and provide flexibility to the network system, in some way could be recompensated for their flexibility. And we believe that logically the consumers need to play an important role if we want to reach the targets about the decarbonization, but it's need for this role and to play this role that they receive the right support from the different administrations. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Javier, for this clear presentation. So accompanying consumers to switch to heat pump or district heating when available, together with the energy efficiency improvements and flexible energy management, I know it will be beneficial for everyone, but requires technical and financial support for the initial investment. So that's a very clear message. So now you can stop sharing your screen, Javier. So
a moment. I don't know. A moment, because I don't know. I have some problems to stop the screen. A moment.
So we will be able to fix that, I guess. In the meantime, I also mentioned that someone was asking about the link to the presentation, and the link was now put in the chat. So if you want to read the details of the study, you find the link in the chat, and the slides presented today will also be available to all of you on our website. So now I invite all panelists to come to activate their cameras so that we can see you. So I've introduced you already, and I will first turn to MEP Marcos Rosempere, who is, as I mentioned, Shadow Rapporteur in the ENVI Committee on the Energy Performance of Buildings Directive. Is also co-rapporteur on the New European Bauhaus communication. And I think, Marcos, improving the quality of life of people, and particularly for the most vulnerable, is very central to your work on both the Bauhaus and the EPBD. So it requires changes such as deep renovation that are not easy to implement. So I would like to hear your views on how to best accompany consumers on this. And starting with a specific question, can the EPBD bring clarity to consumers about which way to go? Marcos.
Hello, good morning to everyone. Thank you, Quentin, for giving me the floor. And also many thanks for the whole European Cooper Institute team for organizing this event to discuss transition to sustainable buildings. And I am very pleased to attend and support this initiative that revolve around buildings in terms of operation, energy efficiency, and most importantly, consumers, because we think that all of this is not all the challenges that we have in the next few years is not, we are not talking about buildings, we are not talking about energy efficiency, we are talking about consumers that live in buildings, that people who lives in their houses, and how we can improve the quality of life of them, and how we can improve the energy saving of at the end of the month of their bill, electricity or gas bill, and how to improve the quality of lives. I am going to share with you some of my points that we are working on the EPBD report, and also on the New European Bauhaus report. We are well aware that buildings are high on the European Union agenda, with several key initiatives on the built environment, as well as the launch of national recovery and resilience plans. So we are now facing a very well moment in the European Union, because we have the Fit for 55 package, we have the European climate law, we have the Green Deal, but also we have faced the pandemic times, and we have created the recovery funds, and the recovery funds also are addressing us to three directions, and one of them is the ecological transition. So we are now in a very good moment to tackle all these elements, and to try to create the real transition that we need. As I have mentioned before, I am the rapporteur of the New European Bauhaus at the European Parliament, and also involved as a shadow in the opinion of the EPBD revision file. It's a pleasure to listen about energy renovation of buildings, and I would like to put the focus on the need of holistic renovation. This is my main points of all the amendments and all the working that we are doing on on the European Parliament. And when we talk of holistic renovation, we are including, of course, the energy component, but also the social dimension, as it is our citizens and their pockets that will be most affected. With a supporting framework, including monitoring of social impacts with special focus on the most vulnerable. The message that we want to get across to the public through the compromise amendments is that it is a balanced, socially just text above all, one that protects the most vulnerable populations, and that all the work we have been doing with the new European House will serve as a basis for developing this directive, this EPBD, in detail. It is also important to recognize that these holistic renovations that we are proposing will mean that citizens don't they are not forced to make a significant effort at the beginning of the implementation of this directive, because we have to take the opportunities that the renovation wave, the recovery funds and the structural funds are giving to citizens, and we have to prioritize the investment of huge amounts of European funds into holistic renovation in order that over the time the citizens have a considerable benefit to their economies. It is important for us the definition of vulnerable areas of neighborhoods which are associated with energy poverty. We are trying to address this concept, the vulnerable areas, because these areas are not affecting only to the building, but also to the users. For this, it is necessary to have a clear definition criteria that address social aspects, poor energy performance, age of the building, access to services and public spaces, accessibility, safety. When we are talking about energy poverty, we have noticed that the energy poverty usually is concentrated in areas, in neighborhoods that have two main aspects. On one side, they are buildings that were built on the 50s, 60s, and 70s decades of the past century, and they don't fit with the nowadays energy requirement, and they are not prepared for energy saving, and we are losing and wasting all the energy in these buildings. But on the other side, it's very common that in these neighborhoods we have people living there with low incomes and with low social characteristics. So we as a European Union, we have to have a clear map of where we have all these areas, and try to address our efforts and try to focus our efforts on our funding and our investment, our public investment in renovating and refurbishing these neighborhoods complete, more than creating some criteria that can spread all over the territory the money, but we are not just arriving to the areas that people need more. Also, we think that we have to take into account historical buildings and historical centers, because we have a general exemption of them in EPBD, but we have to maintain this exemption, but not general exemption. We have to try to incorporate some criteria to get to an exemption or to arrive to an exemption. But if you are going to invest in renovating a historical building, you cannot, we think that you cannot say it's historical or heritage, I am not going to improve anything in energy saving. No, it's historical. Of course, you are not going to fit all the requirements, but here you have a study in which you are respecting the historical content of the building, but you can improve some things. Well, if you are going to invest, you have to improve these things. as I have said, we have to create a European energy poverty map, including these neighborhoods that we have said before, and it has to come from the national plans, the refurbishing national plans that are on the directive, and they have to map and they have to put into clear maps where we have to concentrate our investment. And on the other side, coming back to the holistic renovation, we need to achieve a real change. It is holistic renovation is the only way of profitable investment in long term. We cannot only concentrate the efforts on the directive, on the EPBD directive, into changing our heating or cooling systems. If we haven't done before the renovation of the house or the building, and we are wasting all of the majority of our heating or cooling by the walls, the windows, the roof, the tops, we need to concentrate our efforts and to incentivize people and to give loans and give public money to people to change before changing the cooling or heating system, to change the behavior, the energy behavior of their houses. This is very, very, very important for us. The recovery plans in all member states, we need also a commitment of all member states into these huge challenges that we have. They have to express very well in their recovery plans, the renovate. We are not only having now the opportunity, as I have said at the beginning of my intervention, that I am finishing now. We are not only having the renovation wave or the structural funds, we are having the recovery plans, and it is a very big opportunity to member states to incorporate the renovation of buildings and to achieve the goals of climate neutrality and to improve the lives of citizens by improving their built environment and, of course, leave no one behind. Finishing, I wanted to address a very singular thing that I say always in my interventions. In a very Eurocentric view and Euro-Nordic view, we are always talking about heating systems. But now I want to remember that there are some parts of Europe that are having extreme summers, extreme hot waves, but not hot waves that last 1 week. In some part of Spain, Portugal, Italy, and Greece, and maybe Croatia, Slovenia, we are facing summers that lasts more than 4 or 5 months. I come from a city, my city is Murcia, in which now, in this moment, maybe I am now in Brussels at 18 degrees, but today or yesterday they were in my city at 42 degrees. It is not a singular moment in 1 week along the year. We are facing in the last 20 years, we have increased the heat period on the summers, and we have summers 40 days longer than before. We have more than 35 degrees all the days during May, June, July, August, and September, and not only over 35 in the day, but over 25, 27 in the nights. And so we have to talk also about energy poverty in cooling systems, because when you cannot afford the electricity supply bill to put your air condition, you are not living in well conditions in these buildings. But we have to recover some construction systems that don't need air condition, even in those extreme conditions, because we as architects, we know how to do buildings to be prepared to avoid extreme hot. But we are not doing that in the past 30 years. So we have to rethink the way we are going to build our buildings. And I think it's very important to address also this in the EPBD.
Thank you, Marcos. A lot of very interesting reflections. We see you are an architect. You think holistically and you advocate for holistic renovation, not only for energy, but also the social aspects. I think the neighborhood approach will also be something interesting to discuss historical buildings, the importance to look at all the elements of the building, and of course, cooling as well. So I'm sure all our panelists will like to react on this. We'll try to keep it to short reactions. I will first turn to Olivier for feeds, because as part of this holistic renovation, I know, Marcos, you have also tabled several amendments related to safety and electrical safety. So Olivier, could you briefly explain the key observation and recommendation of feeds on the status of electrical installation in dwellings?
Yes, thank you, Quentin, and thank you for having feeds to this debate. A very short introduction to FEEDS, which is the Forum for European Electrical Domestic Safety. It is a group of stakeholders comprising fire services, insurance companies, consumer organizations, electrical contractors, and manufacturer associations. In fact, we are sharing the same goal, which is improving electrical safety in dwellings. Over the few past years, FEEDS has worked on data regarding domestic fires, and we found out that 25% to 30% of domestic fires have an electrical source. The point is that these fires are preventable, and if we want this fire not to start, we recommend electrical inspection regime at member state level as a key measure. This is necessary because we estimate that there is 132 million of obsolete domestic electrical installations in Europe. We recently made a mapping of electrical inspection regimes across Europe, and we know that the situation varies greatly from a country to another one. And so some efforts are necessary if we want to have inspection regimes more developed in national building renovation plans. And the EPBD could help. It is why we ask to require electrical safety checks in existing buildings on a regular basis and when major electrical equipment are installed, like heat pump, for instance.
Thank you, Olivier. So we had discussed before the heating. Marcos mentioned the cooling as well, and the importance of the building envelopes. Now we have the electrical installation. So all of this is part of a deep renovation. And I think, Adrian, you are advocating for it. And we know deep renovation brings many benefits to consumer, but it's still relatively marginal. So what is needed to boost it?
Yeah, thank you, Quentin, and thanks to Marcos for those great reflections on the Buildings Directive and what's happening. And indeed, the Renovate Europe campaign is calling for deep renovation and a much higher rate of those deep renovations across Europe moving forward. But we're very aware that it's a big challenge. And turning to the title of the event, how do we motivate consumers, or I'd rather say people and building owners, to get on board and ask for deep renovation? I think this is a key question that we ought to be talking more about, how to increase the wish or the desire of consumers and building owners to ask for deep renovation, rather than talking about creating demand for such activities. And in order to do that, I mean, the first thing that crossed my mind was one-stop shops and the way that they can be used to deliver integrated home renovation services to people and to building owners that give independent, clear, complete advice on not only the technical aspects of what can be done to a person's building, but also the financial and regulatory aspects that then need to be brought in behind it. and quite importantly, advice on who to employ as installers or contractors for the works. Because when we come to people, this question of trust in who you allow into your home or your building is of key importance. And it seems that if there isn't trust in that segment of the sector, then the desire to undertake the works is very low. And we have ideas in the Renovate Europe campaign on how to increase that, but maybe I could come back to those. I mean, these are initial thoughts, Quentin, on what I've been listening to so far.
Thank you, Adrian. So we need to motivate property owners, and Emmanuel is representing property owners. So we know it's a necessary political objective, but yeah, Emmanuel, what are the views of property owners on the way to do it, on the way to get motivated?
Thank you, Quentin. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for the invitations. Just a few words about us. We represent property owners, meaning homeowners. You have to know that 70% of the population in Europe live in their own house. So when you say building owners and consumer, basically building owners are consumers. So I just want to clarify that. We represent as well small landlord and larger, let's say, real estate owners. If we leave a larger one aside and we just concentrate on homeowner and small landlord, I think I would just second everything that Javier said. I basically have not much to add to that. I think what we need is also, as Adrian mentioned, what I would call the 3 A's. So first is availability of workers, availability of materials. You mentioned heat pump. We see now, for example, in Netherlands, we have really rolling out the use of heat pump, that there's about 12 to 15 weeks waiting list for getting a heat pump. So this is really becoming an issue. Availability, as I say, of workers, even as we know, most countries have a shortage of technicians, energy efficiency consultants, etc. The second point is affordability, a key point, and that is also very much linked to funding. And as you say, Adrian, advice, and you need good advice. So one-stop shop is really something we are promoting. We need to roll out this independent advice, and we see that there's a clear lack in Europe of these opportunities for consumers. So this is really something we need to work on. You mentioned fundings. Yes, there is a lot of funding coming from the EU, but I think, Adrian, you did a great study about the RFF. I think you came to the conclusion that there was about 40 billion, at least in your first assessment, 40 billion available for renovation. Altogether, I think the Commission assessed that about 150 billion euro available for energy efficiency renovation in EU funds. This is great, this is huge, but this is not enough because we need 275 billion euro a year. So a lot will depend on what member states can do. And there are, of course, some limitations. So we will see what member states can put on the table. But again, we really need to work on fulfilling these 3 aspects. So affordability, availability, and advice, basically good advice. So that would be my first reaction to you.
Thank you, Emmanuel. So Marcos, we mentioned the safety, the one-stop shops, the availability, affordability, and advice, and one-stop shop being one answer to this advice question. Also the challenge of having enough funding. Do you want to react on some of these points, Marcos? What can be addressed in the EPBD according to you?
Well, especially I would like to react on the skilling and reskilling of workers, because we have introduced this concept as in form of amendments to the EPBD revision report, and we are very aware of the lack of well-skilled workers in the new challenges that we have. We have a lot of construction workers all over Europe, but we are changing our paradigm. We are trying to construct it in. We are trying to do works in other direction. We are trying to make a transition. We are trying to think the way we use materials. We put. It's very important that the constructive solutions, not only the traditional materials, and we need to reskill and skill new workers and reskill actual workers. So it is very, very important to be very conscious of the importance of introduce into the educational system the need for green jobs, because green jobs require new abilities, new skills, and it's not only a question of saying, oh, we are going to change our solutions, the same workers they will improve. No, the same workers need to be reskilled. We have addressed that. Fortunately, it seems that it is one of the compromise proposed by the rapporteurs. So I hope it will be reflected on the final report. And of course, there are more things very interesting that all of you have mentioned. And I think the majority of the shadow rapporteurs and of course the rapporteurs on MB opinion on EPBD, we are on the same way as all of you have been mentioning on your interventions. Maybe one particular aspect finally will not enter, but the majority of the aspect that you have been mentioning this morning, I think finally they are going to be reflected on our proposal. This is our proposal from the European Parliament. Of course, we need, after that, we need to negotiate with the European Commission and the European Council. So don't think that if our proposal is adopted, we will have this on the revision. Then we will have to negotiate with the Commission and the Council.
Thank you, Marcos. I see we have some questions that were raised, and Javier, you answered this also in writing about some systems maybe not considered into the study, and also a question whether heat pump is also working into cold countries like Poland, which I think was covered by your study. So maybe you want to complement on this, Javier, and to react to other things that have been said.
Yes, as I comment, it's true that we in the study we have not included all the system that we would like, because the budget was is limited. But this is another system, and the use of another system or another type of energy is like a photovoltaic system in conjunction with the heat pump and so on are a good solution. And one of the points that always appear is that in the cold climates, the heat pumps could be not the perfect solution, because the efficiency is decreasing with the temperatures. It's true that it's decreasing, but we are talking that the efficiency of a heat pump is more than 300% in comparison with a boiler that in a condensation boiler could be 110% more or less. But even in these cases of extreme zones, we can use hybrid solutions. We are not telling that only the heat pump is the solution. We are telling that heat pumps looks that is the economical solution, is the more economical solution in most of the countries, but it's necessary to see if it's possible or not possible, because even in some flats could be not easy to do the installation of this type of system.
Thank you, Javier. Would like to now discuss key point of the proposal of the Commission and also of the proposal of the rapporteur. So a key new instrument of the EPBD is the minimum energy performance standards. And it's interesting that we discussed about empowering consumers, encouraging them to, or property owners to renovate, etc. But with minimum energy performance standards, it's really making it mandatory. And to address this, the rapporteur in ITRE, Karen Kuff, proposed to request member states to develop social safeguards to protect vulnerable households. And I think it's also something you referred to, Marcos. So it includes technical and administrative support, we discuss it, but also rent support, caps on rent increase, and financial incentives. So I'd like to briefly ask all of you your view on this, and maybe first, Emmanuel, for property owners, is it the right approach?
Thank you for the question. I think the maps will be the most challenging part of the directive for us, and indeed this will have an impact directly on homeowners because it's a direct obligation on every single citizen having a low-performing building, not only landlords, that is being done in UK or in France. So we will see how this can be implemented. In general, we need social safeguard. We need to protect the most vulnerable consumer. We need to protect as well, I would say, middle income household, because this provision and the need for renovation is not only challenging for the poorest, but it's also challenging for a large part of the EU population. So we shouldn't forget that. Regarding the safeguards set in or proposed in the EPBD, I would kind of say, yes, it's great. It's great to call for social safeguard. It's great to call for housing support and rent control, but there is a lack of competence of the EU in the field. Housing and rental law is not EU competence. So there is a limit to what can be done and asked in the directive on these matters. And we need to keep that into account when we look at the obligation we put in place. I would almost say it's a wishful thinking, but maybe sometimes also slightly hypocritical to look at this safeguard in a way that we all know that would not indeed in the end pass the final check because it's not EU competence. So we have to be careful on how we formulate that. You can ask member state, as Marcos say, to look into finding solution for specific area. By the way, Marcos, I will not also add that it's very important to look at rural areas, the specific areas, and there are specific needs there, so we shouldn't forget that. You can ask that in the national plan. You can also require member states to look at how to implement social safeguard, but you cannot dictate or you cannot require member states to put in place specific social safeguards. So we need to keep that in mind. That's why for us, the most important aspect when we look at the EPBD is to make sure that the measure we propose will be implementable and cost effective in a way that, for me, it's the best way to guarantee social safeguards. So thank you.
Thank you, Emmanuel. Adrian, maybe you would like to react on this.
Yeah, I think when it comes to minimum energy performance standards, I would start at the end and say, if we all agree that by 2050, we have to have highly energy efficient and decarbonized buildings, then the discussion is about how do we go from where we are today until that point in what seems to us a distant future, but I can tell you 28 years is not far away. And in that respect, from a technical perspective, it seems that the design of the minimum energy performance standards has to be also considered in conjunction with the social safeguards correctly discussed here today. And what I mean by that is when they are designed, they should capture more of the energy efficiency potential in the first stage of the MEPS introduction, so that we're not imposing multiple renovations on the same owners time and again as we go on that journey forward to 2050. To be more clear, 2050, we're going to have a decarbonized building stock, and it's going to have to be highly energy efficient with a low demand so that renewables can be economically deployed for fulfilling that demand. And so the sooner we can move forward up the scales, the better. And so we will be supportive of Rapporteur Cuff's proposal that we should be at sea level by 2033. But then I'm very sensitive to what Marcus said earlier about holistic approaches. And when you come to actually looking at renovation projects, you have to tailor the project proposal to the characteristics of the building, or to the group of buildings, or to the neighborhood. And that's something that maybe isn't said often enough, that we architects and I think building owners appreciate maybe more closely than policy and makers and regulators. So it's a complex question, Quentin. I think if we can all agree that the end goal is the right goal, then we can have meaningful conversations on what the pathway should be towards it. And I hope that when we come up to an agreement across the various negotiating parties, that they will be ambitious and will more or less guarantee we achieve that end goal.
Thank you, Adrian. And then I noted also you speak about tailored approach needed in some case. I think that that's very important. Olivier, when we look at these social safeguards and the question of energy poverty, are the most vulnerable households also more at risk for electrical safety, according to your data?
To be short, I would say yes. But as I already said, there is 132 million of obsolete domestic electrical installation in Europe. And of course, and unfortunately, the most degraded houses are the most likely to have obsolete electrical installation that can be at fire risk. And it is where vulnerable communities are potentially living. So FEEDS strongly believe about the link between fire safety and energy poverty, because the poorest live in the leakiest and least fire-safe buildings. We are at the moment performing a study on that topic to bring more evidence, and we expect to publish a report by the autumn with more explanation, for sure.
Thank you, Olivier. Marcos, we'll see that when we discuss holistic renovation, we want to look at aspects that then come into things that can be seen as out of the scope of the EU competencies. And that can be the case for safety, it can be the case for what is relating to housing regulation. But I understand you want to be holistic and to mention that all these things have to be considered. But how do you see we can cope with it, with this question of subsidiarity at the end?
Yes, of course, that when we talk about holistic renovation, sometimes we are going out of the scope of European Union competencies. We assume that, but we have to have we need to have this debate inside the European Union institutions, and we need to encourage member states to work on this direction. And I welcome very much the initiative coming from the European Union that they have called the New European Bauhaus, because the New European Bauhaus is asking us to think in holistic dimension, and not only in sustainability, but also in beauty. But when you talk about beauty, you are not talking about if you like or not or don't like the building. We are talking about comfort, we are talking about adaptability, we are talking about accessibility, we are talking about safety in your buildings. And of course, the third dimension of the New European Bauhaus is also the inclusion. And when we talk about inclusion, we are talking about energy poverty. We are talking about vulnerable areas. We are talking about all these things that this morning we are talking little by little in all the interventions. So. And what is the European Bauhaus? We still don't know what it's really, but it is I always say that it is an invitation to think if we can spend the same money or almost the same money in renovating our building stock, but also considering other factors, not only the energy efficiency of the building. Because if not, and then I may ask, it is ethical to spend public money only to improve the energy behavior of the building, but without the people living in this building improving their lives? No, I think if we are talking about public money, it is not ethical. So this is the reflection that the European Bauhaus invites us to incorporate, and these are most of the reflection that all these other rapporteurs we are trying to incorporate according to the competencies, which is difficult, into the EPBD revision. We are talking about safety in the EPBD revision, as Olivier has said. We are talking about energy poverty, as I have mentioned before. We are talking about a lot of things that maybe in the negotiation with the Commission or the Council, they will say, oh, it's not our competence, but we are trying to fight against the administrative burden. And if not competence of the European Union, the paragraph will say, encourage member states to work on this direction, because if it is not our competence, at least it's our moral obligation, ethic obligation to encourage the competence to work on this direction.
Thank you, Marcus. I think that's a very interesting approach, and I like the idea that you want to remind that you need to think holistically and encourage to do it, and then it will be an interesting discussion you will have with the member states at the end. We are approaching the end of our debate already, so I will just ask every panelist to come with a final message, final conclusion statement. And there was still a question addressed to Emmanuel that I would like to express to her, if you want to use it for your final statement, or to quickly answer this one and then come with your conclusion. What can we do to make sure that property owners actually want to renovate instead of feeling that they are imposed to renovate? I think that's a good question to you, Emmanuel.
Thank you. That's the question, I would say. So thank you. No, I think what we are trying to do is really this raising awareness, again, coming back to this one-stop shop, but in general, I think people understand the need, people want to do something. I mean, we had a survey last year showing clearly that property owners are willing to renovate. The question is how and with what money. So again, I think what we are trying to do, for example, we have a renovation tour. We are going everywhere in Europe. We'll have one soon in Barcelona again, showing owners what is needed, what is coming. As Adrien said, there is a clear objective, is 2050 decarbonized building stock. So we explain how to do and what they can do and with which money. And I think it's a huge task. I mean, there is like a huge need, basically. You need basically to knock at every single door to do that. So that's why I will add to what Marcos said. I think this holistic approach is a very good aspect. I will also add to the fact that you need maybe a neighboring type of approach. So you were mentioning heating, for example, as an owner, you need to know what the local heating solution will be in the next 5 to 10 years in order to take your own decision and see which are the best option for you. Is the district heating coming? There will be a rollout of locally what we see in Netherlands of possibility to install heat pump, etc. So this local approach in general, that's maybe something is missing in the EPBD and is missing in many of the Fit for 55 texts. So a local approach together with a tailored, so for specific building, each building is specific and each inhabitant needs special needs. But in the end, I think we need to work on this neighbor district approach.
Thank you. So neighborhood approach. Javier, do you want to come with a final statement?
More or less that I agree with more of the comments that we have reached during this debate, and the holistic approach. I think that is a good solution, difficult but a good solution. But okay, it's important in the case of consumers that we integrate, that we give them good advice, good facilities to tackle this challenge. And very important, don't forget vulnerable people, because if we forget these people, finally we are going to penalize double or three times than the usual, because perhaps in the future the use of the energy could be penalized for those people that are using more energy.
Yeah. Thank you, Javier. So don't forget vulnerable people. Olivier, quickly.
Yes, sorry, I'm more specific than holistic, but obsolete domestic electrical installations in Europe represent half of the building stock. And if we want to succeed the energy transition, which will be mainly based on electrification, we need first to certify fire safety. And FEED's message is clear at this point: electrical inspection regimes are key, and the EPBD is a lever. Thank you.
Thank you, Olivier. Adrian, final word.
Yeah, one idea that I wanted to bring to the debate, because I think it could make people more confident in the energy renovation sector, is the idea that why not create a new industrial activity called energy renovation, and kind of divorce the thinking of people from pure construction work. And I bring that forward because when a design team looks at a new construction project, they take a particular approach and there's a particular process you go through. When you look at a neighborhood and you have to renovate all of the buildings in the neighborhood, your process and your mind, your approach is radically different. It's much more meticulous, it's much more consultative, it's much more collaborative. And I think that could help transform the view of people of energy renovation if it were treated as a separate activity. And it would also bring more innovation and more entrepreneurship to this segment of industrial activity. Thanks.
Thank you, Adrian. So obviously there will be still much more work to do once the EPBD will be adopted. It's already 11, but Marcos, would you like to make a short conclusion from your side?
Well, of course, a very short conclusion. I think it is. We are now in the moment of the European Union to think about this. It's very important to introduce the revision of the EPBD on the framework of the European Green Deal and all the things that we are changing now with the Fit for 55 package. Also, my first and my last statement is that we have to think on holistic renovation, holistic approach to renovation, and holistic approach to energy efficiency of the buildings. We cannot think separately of emission and then of energy saving and then of separately also on water recycling, on separately on mobility in buildings or neighborhoods. We have to try to give a holistic approach and also think about the second thing, important thing is think about people who lives in these buildings. We cannot think only on buildings, on iron, concrete, glass, steel. No, we have to think of people living in their houses. So how are they going to afford these changes? How are they going to improve their lives if they improve the quality of their buildings? This is the two things that I think are more important now in this debate.
Thank you, Marcos. So holistic approach to holistic renovation for people. I think that's a good summary of our discussion for today. So thank you, everyone. We have to stop here, but thank you for your participation and your holistic contribution. It was the final EPBD debate organized by Leonardo Energy by the European Copper Institute. I think the next important debate will be next week in the ITRE committee to debate the draft report on EPBD, and there will be much more discussion to continue. So Marcos, thank you for your participation again, and we wish you a lot of good results in the negotiation and discussion with your colleagues. And as you see, I think the whole value chain is there to support and engage in this discussion to make the renovation wave a success. So thank you everyone for your participation and attendance today, and see you next time.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.
Bye.